Scott Pilgrim versus the world is my jam.
We are Sex Bob, and we're here to make you think about death and get sad and stuff.
This is the beginning of the song.
Ooh, this is my jam. This is my... Turn that song off. This is my jam.
I'm happy. I'm feeling glad I got sunshine. In a bag, I'm useless, but not for long. The future is coming up.
I think it's pretty good.
The pacing is melodic and energized, the editing is some of the most rhythmic and inventive ever conceived, the ensemble cast is overflowing with memorable characters, the action is connected and impactful, it is some of the most quotable jokes I know, the dialogue is harder and sharper than a flaming katana, the aesthetics are polished to a fine sheen.
And it's frickin' fun. This movie is just frickin' fun. Fun and unique.
Special snowflake blast! Blah!
Scott Pilgrim has such an unmistakable, one-of-a-kind identity that's poured into every nook and cranny. It's got the DNA of dozens of references and inspirations while somehow managing to be entirely its own thing at the same time. It's beyond a magnum opus. It's got no notable flaws I can think of other than making me wish it fleshed itself out more and more and had gone on longer and longer. I could sit through a Lord of the Rings length marathon of Scott Pilgrims and not get enough of it. However, for what it is, it's one of the most refined, singular artistic products in the entire medium of motion pictures. So yeah, I think it's pretty good. I also kind of like it. Just a bit. All that gushing was just the hoity-toity critical analysis, post-hoc justification stuff. On a personal level, Scott Pilgrim is just my kind of flick. It's a story about young characters that's been a permanent part of my young life. I've been more or less the same age as these characters since it came out in 2010. I was almost as old as them back then and almost as young as them now to still be able to relate to them intimately. I've gone through similar experiences and lived similar lifestyles as many of these guys. I got basically all the video game, comic, and anime references without any research. When, in context, the bands are supposed to sound mediocre in universe, I still kinda somehow dig the soundtrack. I'm a huge fan of the graphic novel source material, but I think the film adapted it as perfectly as possible for its runtime without invalidating the books and allowing each to have their own strengths. I love how this universe is designed to constantly make fun of hipsters while being totally into everything about hipster culture, just like I do and am. It's got the kind of sardonic and irreverent tone that I employ myself on a daily basis. Scott Pilgrim is a film that I've rewatched consistently at least once a year for more than a decade, and it gets better and better every time I see it. I just kind of resonates with me in that ephemeral quality that's hard to express or even for me to understand myself. I just kinda get it.
I kind of like it where the part where the big monkey shows up and then a bunch of pretty colors happen. Big monkey, pretty colors.
So yeah, I kinda like it.
But one fateful day, something strange happened. I showed it to someone who is not me. And they didn't like it.
So, what do I do? What's the deal? What's the deal? What is she talking about? What? 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 What the hell?
What did you say?
Love is a trash emotion. It's hard to articulate, and it's even harder to articulate well. It's easily lost while it's growing, and not easily gained back when it's lost. Worst of all, it's something that people can never truly share. Nobody feels the same way about anything in the exact same way as someone else does. Even the most blinkered, star-crossed lovers who dedicate their entire lives to one another don't feel exactly the same way about each other.
Since he's useless, I'll sacrifice my dark magician. I thought what we had was special!
Everyone's different, everyone thinks different, and that is okay. At least, that's what I tell myself. When I feel passionately about something, I don't just want that feeling to be trapped alone inside me forever. I want to spread it to as many people as possible who will tolerate listening to me. I want to make them understand as thoroughly as possible with the tools I've got. However, doing that isn't easy. People aren't easy. The least easy thing about people is understanding them. Being able to properly interpret what people are thinking is pretty tough sometimes. Sometimes it's on them. People can have a hard time articulating themselves. A lot of times it's on me, owing to the fact that I'm a slumbering mongoloid when it comes to people. That's why I've done the world a favor and corralled myself in this dark pocket dimension where I don't have the opportunity to screw up trying to understand people. It works for me pretty well most of the time. I am nothing if not a master at avoiding failure. However, there are times where I go against my programming. There are those moments where I do that gross thing where I'm around another smelly human or two or so. Even more disturbing, there are those freak accidents where I actually attempt to talk to them. Even more messed up, I actually try to get to know them. And if I'm truly far gone, try to make friends with... I have a mixed history with this endeavor. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. However, the few lotteries I have won while playing before were based on the odds being rigged. My way of cooking the books and making social things easier is to whip out one of the secret ninja bloodline techniques. Shared interests. I am relatively unpracticed in this art, as my only chakra pools I can draw upon, proficiently at least, are goofy kung fu Korean cartoons, tits, and the various intersections of the two. However, movies are one of the more commonly practiced arts, so I've been sure to hone my skills in that department as well. Since I like movies and most people like movies, that's one of the martial arts I default to. Social situations are hard, but talking about stuff like Scott Pilgrim is not. It's easier and has a better success rate than most for me, at least. However, one fateful day, I ran into a bit of a pickle.
I'm Pickle Rick!
I was interacting with one of those meaty water sack monster things that I regrettably share a species with. It was one of those evenings where my mood dictated that my combat abilities would be slightly weaker than usual. However, I was successfully fighting the urge to run away and cry as per usual. The battle was progressing well enough, but it was hardly without effort. This opponent was strong indeed, and much of my repertoire of techniques wasn't penetrating their defenses. In a last-ditch effort, I pulled out my trump card and brought up Scott Pilgrim. Lo and behold, this creature had not yet seen the film, and I immediately went into attack mode. I told them to stop what they were doing, sit their ass down, and watch this killer flick with me. Surely, this move would score a critical hit, and I could finally land a game-changing blow to turn the tide in my favor. We sat our asses down, and we watched it. And we watched it. And we watched it. For the full length of an hour and 45 minutes. And in that time, I did not hear a peep. Not a laugh, not a chuckle, not even a thick exhale out their nose. And for every time I dared to look at their face, I didn't see a single smile. At the end, they only had a couple things to say. One was complaining about Scott being a dick. Another was this line, and I quote, "That sure was an experience." In the most dry, disaffected tone I'd ever heard a person say anything in their life. I'm not a crier. Not anymore, anyways. I was a pretty sniffy kid back in the day. Get a few shots of Fireball in my cider, and maybe I can induce that state in myself once in a blue moon or so.
A few inches later. A few moments later.
No, don't say you're fucking sorry, dude. Oh, damn it, you didn't do anything wrong, man. Don't say you're sorry. No! However, in my right mind, I don't really do the whole tears thing. I am a man. A manly man. A big, strong, bassy-voiced, large dong-having manly man. However, in that moment, in that raw, suffocating vacuum of sitting down next to that person, I felt that feeling. I didn't feel tears coming on, far from it, but it's that kind of light pressure in the chest that makes me feel twice as heavy, and I'm quite the chungus already, so that's saying something. It makes me feel like my arms and legs are covered in weighted clothing, and my head feels like it's full of wet cement that's starting to harden. I felt like I got told I didn't make an audition for the role of a lifetime. I felt like a childhood friend told me they were moving to another country or something, and we might not see each other in person again for years, if not ever. I felt like, well, still groggy and grouchy, opening the fridge for breakfast in the morning, excited to chow down upon some kick-ass sugar cereal, and then realizing something. Not only did I not have enough milk, but the milk that was left had gone bad.
This is probably all his fault somehow. If I can't have cereal, then at least have some steak!
At the time, I played it off. I responded, "Yeah, Scott sure was a dick." We were actually eating garlic bread at the time, so I thought of a killer save. I quipped, "Were you upset just because you learned garlic bread makes you fat?" To which they responded, and I quote, "Well, too late. I'm already fat." I couldn't make a comeback to that. It felt like coming up for air while I was drowning in the middle of the ocean, only for some massive creature to swallow me, and then I proceed to start drowning in their stomach while also being enveloped by darkness. It was sink or swim, and I sunk. My brain kinda blue screened there. I thought of all the arguments I could make about why Scott Pilgrim was cool. I thought about getting into it. I thought about proving this snowflake's feelings wrong with facts and logic. However, the atmosphere at the time felt so thick that I had to chop through it like getting through some jungle undergrowth. It felt like one of those times where I felt and later found out that I had said or done something wrong to someone. I'm at least socially conscious enough to recognize when people are uncomfortable, but I'm still practicing with the whole why deal. I'm getting better at it, but this brought me back to those days where I seriously had no clue what I was doing. At that moment, I didn't feel like exerting myself to fix anything. I just kinda choked and slunk away, and that was that. The stages of grief set in pretty quick. First, I came up with excuses for their reaction. I thought, they probably just weren't in the mood, and maybe Scott Pilgrim just wasn't for them. You know, to each their own, everyone's entitled to their opinion. It's not like anything was in the movie that they didn't like. The movie's perfect. It's probably just a wrong time and place thing. Maybe we could try again sometime. If not, that's cool, man. No sweat.
It's a chance you have to take with love.
Then came the indignance. What the hell, dude? We sat down to watch a movie and have a cool time. Why couldn't you have at least tried to like it? I told you how neat I thought this movie was beforehand, so why did you go in to dislike it? There might have been some personal gobbledygook you were talking about earlier, but it couldn't have been that important, right? I know some friend of yours said that they didn't like it, but why should that matter? Are you really so manipulable that your friend's opinions are just your own by default? What about my opinion? I guess that must mean I'm not your friend if you don't just Kirby swallow and copy my thoughts too. You don't want to like the movie? Fine, I don't want to like you. It's just my opinion after all. I'm entitled to not like you just the same way you don't like Scott Pilgrim. There wouldn't be anything wrong with that, would there? Everyone's entitled to their opinion. Blah. That quickly dissipated into self-loathing and hindsight theorizing.
Regrets, I've had a few.
What if I had bought some drinks beforehand? What if I had made a better pitch beforehand? What if I picked up on their hesitancy better before we started watching? What if I'd gotten to know them a little more so I could profile them better? What if I'd let them take a break in the middle of it? What if I talked with them more about their thoughts after we were done? What if I did this? What if I said that? Should I have done this? Should I have said that?
And more, much more than this.
Fuck. All throughout, I had a case of the feels bad man.
Feels so bad.
I failed. I could have made someone fall in love with my favorite movie. I could have made someone appreciate this cult classic and maybe contribute to the better part of the film industry. I could have created a bigger demand for these kinds of movies to grow the audience that can guarantee a return on these types of risks. I could have helped make more Scott Pilgrims and Edgar Wrights, and they could have made more happiness in the world. But I didn't. I failed. I failed.
Thank you.
I don't know if I got to the whole acceptance thing. I just remember kind of not having anything to say and slithering away quietly. I think I might have just watched some rave reviews for Scott Pilgrim for a little bit to justify my opinion. Didn't make me feel much better, though. I felt like I was just jerking it in the hopes that I would stop being dry eventually. Alas, I was forever soft that day. At least Shinji had something going for him there. He could still bust a nut. As an aspiring nerdy garbage talking about guy, My number one goal is to glean more clarity about myself, both for my own sake and for other people. If others can appreciate the things I like, cool. If I can get them to appreciate me as a person, whatever, also cool. If people don't like me or the things I like, that should be cool too. However, what concerns me the most is people just getting the facts straight. What I think and who I am are just pieces of information that anyone can do with as they please. The principles and ideologies people use to govern their judgments aren't my concern, so long as their conclusions aren't based on fake news. The number one thing I can find annoying in a critic is if they sound insecure. I mean, all critics are insecure. People wouldn't devote themselves to careers about justifying their opinions if they really felt secure in them. However, when a critic sounds on edge about how their opinion is going to be received, I start getting irritated. The "just my opinion" disclaimer is one of the most trite pieces of filth a person can spew in an argument. I mean, duh, of course it's your opinion. You're not talking about statistics or science, you're talking about art. Don't feel the need to slap an asterisk on every statement you make. It just disrupts the pacing of your talking points and wastes everyone's time. Have confidence in what you're talking about. If you don't, why the heck should I or anyone else listen to you? However, even with all that in mind, it's impossible for me not to be a hypocrite and be massively insecure myself. I hate it, but I care about how someone's gonna interpret my thoughts. It shouldn't matter what people think of you, and I always tell myself it especially doesn't matter to me. Still, if someone doesn't like what I think, no matter how much I tell myself that fact, something gets to me. I'm pretty sure I couldn't care less about being quote-unquote judged. I mean, why should I give a crap if someone thinks less of me for an opinion? Unless they have power over my life, there's no real consequences that should come from a disagreement. Random schmucks on the internet should, by any metric, have zero influence on my emotions. I'll probably never meet any of them, and whatever they say can be blocked or forgotten about, like last Friday's breakfast.
You are not going to be a meal that is low in saturated fats, good sir. This is going to be a cheat day in my diet.
It's not like other opinions never matter to me for whatever time I choose to interact with them, but it's a voluntary, inconsequential, in and out process that's totally in my control. However, it's a different ballgame entirely when the audience is someone I know. Someone I care about, even in the vaguest, most infinitesimal way imaginable, has power over me. More power, in fact, than every stranger on Earth combined. It doesn't matter what objective metrics I use to determine how big a part of my life they might or have to play. They still matter. If there's a chance I can make a connection with them, if I've already laid down the groundwork, I want to follow through. I don't really want every person to be able to pop in and out of my life without consequence. That happens inevitably for some people I meet, sure. Hell, it happens for most of them. I'd still like a few to matter. I'm the pickiest bastard on the planet when it comes to the people I respect, so if I care what someone thinks, it's not arbitrary. I'm invested in them, for good reasons or not. I can't help it. It's just a garbage part of being human. Man, this species stinks. Forget about Return to Monkey, I'm going back to the primordial soup. Unfortunately, until the prophecy of the Dead Sea Scrolls is complete, I'm stuck with the cards I'm dealt. For now, that means I have to play as a social animal. I'm no king of games when it comes to this meta, but I try to be as skilled as I can in the games I play. Winning is fun. Being social is fun. Occasionally. When I win, that is. I hate losing. Most of the time, I'd rather not play something than lose. Pussy move to be sure, but that's an instinct that's given me a decent win-loss ratio in most matters. I play to win, and that means entering games that I have a thorough game plan for. I observe and download my opponent's mindset. I figure out what kind of deck they're gonna play, and I stack my deck with as many counters as I can get my hands on. I don't have the biggest collection to draw from, but I like to think that the cards I do have are pretty dang effective. However, life isn't a tournament arc. There aren't schedules for when duels are supposed to take place. Sometimes someone just waltzes up to me and asks me to get my game on. Even though I am a colossal wiener and I often don't want to play, I don't want to just tuck tail and run. I like a good challenge. If I win a game without preparing, that victory feels all the sweeter. I take on all comers. Heart in the cards or no, anyone can be the king of games, so I might as well try. However, there are those rare exceptions where I just want to play casual, you know? I don't have the energy to play shadow games every single time. High-stakes games are more engaging for sure, but I can use a break now and then. Sometimes I just want to have fun. Win or lose, getting the practice is healthy and will make me a better player in the long run. What makes me want to quit, though, is when those casual games turn serious. When I'm just trying to relax and all of a sudden I feel like I'm about to be sent to the Shadow Realm, that sucks. My opponent doesn't even have to turn a conversation into a shadow game themselves. Sometimes, oftentimes, I do it to myself. Sometimes I get so invested and put so much effort into a person that I can't help it. Engaging with people with something on the line is just way more interesting, even if that mindset isn't healthy to be in all the time. Sometimes I kinda have to do it because I'm losing the social battle, and the only way I can recover is to go try hard. When I showed Scott Pilgrim to this dude, I was playing my god card. This was my ace in the hole. I'd never lost with it before, and yet it got swatted aside like a goddamn Karibo. That shit hurts. I got bodied. It's not about losing necessarily. I'm plenty used to losing. I can take an L if I don't happen to draw the right cards or I just misplayed them, but this was different. My god card is a token achievement that I'd earned from an entire story arc. I felt when I acquired it that I could never lose again so long as I summoned it properly. But it didn't pan out that way. That card got chucked into the sea like a piece of glorified cardboard. The nerve of this dude, right? What shitty cards did this weevil have? Probably some jobber-ass starter deck that couldn't beat a retarded secondary character with a Brooklyn accent. Who the f*** were they to disrespect my card? They screwed the rules. Scott Pilgrim isn't supposed to lose. What the hell is going on here? F*** you, meaner bug! You hack's-ass piece of sh**! Welp, it turns out that no play is a surefire win. Not in games, and not in life. There's no guarantee that people will respond to anything predictably. There's no card that can't be sent to the graveyard. There's no joke that can't bomb. There's counterplay for everything, and everyone has a deck that can counter something. And you know what else? Back then, just because that one stupid card didn't work, didn't mean I had lost the game. I had others I could have played. I could have come up with a new strategy. I just got so dejected from this one miscalculation that I sandbagged for the rest of the match. As comfortable as I feel holding this L now, I still want to look back and reevaluate my strategy. What could I have done better? What was my opponent's deck really like? What was their strategy at the time? Who were they? Why did they respond to me and my god card in the way that they did? Maybe, if I find some answers, I can prevent this card from being beaten again in the future. I thought, and I thought, and I thought a little bit more. Finally, I came to a realization. And it made me piss. At myself, specifically. It was so obvious, so clearly staring me in the face, and yet I didn't see it after all this stupid angst. Here's the rub. Scott Pilgrim is a story about a jerk. I like jerks. Well, some jerks. Specifically, jerk characters. I don't need my protagonists to be moral or respectable to like them. I think in the 21st century, most people feel the same way. However, Scott isn't some supervillain or sociopath in some special way. He's whiny. He's self-absorbed. He's inconsiderate. He's entitled. He's awkward. He's a dweeb. He's not exceptionally terrible. He's just kind of normal terrible. He's a mid-20s guy that dates a barely legal high school girl just because he's insecure and complacent, and proceeds to cheat on her with another girl he had fallen in love with instantly. That love isn't based on knowing anything about this new girl as a person, it's just some ephemeral connection he felt while seeing her in a vision. When he finds out this pixie dream girl actually has baggage and isn't the simplest perfect princess he could have signed up for, he bitches about it. Even though he breaks up with the 17-year-old, he still feels entitled to the same kind of lifestyle he had before while expecting this new girl to provide him with something fresh and exotic. He's not used to fighting for what he wants, and he's bailed on another relationship in the past for not wanting to put in the effort. Scott is just pathetic. So, we have a story about a dick. Neat. I'm down. I'm into dicks. We also have a story about breakups and questionable relationships. Neat. I'm down. I'm all about questionable relationships. But guess who wasn't down? That other dude I was sitting next to. A dude that had some personal stuff going on. A dude that had just recently gone through a bad breakup with a huge dick. A dude that had drama going on with someone in their friend group hitting on someone underage. So, it's time to put the thinking cap on. Why didn't this person like Scott Pilgrim? Well, gee f***ing whiz, I wonder why it's just not fucking coming to me! I felt like the salt of the earth. I was so myopic, so entrenched in what this movie objectively was and what it subjectively meant to me that I couldn't see what it meant to someone else. In spite of its problematic elements, I can rationalize why Scott Pilgrim is still fun to watch all day long. It's obvious from the movie's tone that the story knows Scott sucks and his decisions suck. It's obvious that the fun of the action scenes is based on watching this nutsack get his nuts kicked in, as well as watching him grow into a less nutsacky person. It's obvious that the narrative is a classic want versus need arc. Point after point, I could list everything and anything that any idiot who saw Scott Pilgrim could obviously recount themselves. What isn't so obvious is the godforsaken inner workings of another person's mind. The lens that this person used to view this film is all that mattered. I could make as an objective analysis of this film as I could. Better than anyone could, hell. I could produce logic so ironclad that God himself could be persuaded. That wouldn't matter. Not in the least. This person was living a life experience that prevented them from appreciating this movie. Plain and simple. It wasn't for anything that was in Scott Pilgrim alone, it was how it played off the stuff inside their head. They could say it was a piece of shit, and I was a piece of shit for liking it, and they would still have some kind of justification. Their subjective experience is all that matters. And guess what else? I like Scott Pilgrim in the same subjective way. I've never been viciously dumped or dealt with underage taboos in my life. Hell, relationships aren't a huge factor in my life in general right now. I felt the characters were just close enough to my experience of reality to project myself into the narrative and get immersed. I also felt like I was a comfortable enough distance away from the lesser parts of the characters to not internalize them too hard. This film isn't real to me. It's just a f***ing movie. It's a movie that I love, but it's not my real life. It's time for me to acknowledge the thing that my brain doesn't want to think about. The word trigger. Noun. As defined by Merriam-Webster Dictionary, it is a piece, such as a liver connected to the yada yada yada, who cares. Trigger. Verb. To release or activate by means of a trigger. To cause the explosion of. To initiate, actuate, or set off by a trigger. And last but not least, the newcomer in town. To cause an intense and unusually negative emotional reaction in someone. Triggers, triggered, triggering, triggerists, triggerly, triggity-doo-dah. What a funny word. You know what's also funny? Memes. This word is a meme now. It used to be used purely mechanically, in the context of mechanical devices, that is. It was then transformed to be something loaded without irony in serious emotional contexts. That usage persists today, I suppose. However, the common colloquial usage and tone has taken a turn for the smarmier. People who demand trigger warnings are commonly derided as entitled, melodramatic crybabies. The stigma has been so deeply entrenched at this point that even progressives have had to adapt around it. Even content creators who regularly use disclaimers for explicit content call those disclaimers content warnings instead of trigger warnings. That's how cursed this word is now. It's the quintessential affectation of the special snowflake. And it's certainly not hard to find examples that fit that stereotype too.
Donald J. Trump is now President of the United States. President Obama.
Even now, after a lot of introspection and balancing my politics, it's hard for me not to see this word in this way most of the time. The world isn't fair. It never will be. The universe is a capricious ball of chaos with no regard for our problems. Everyone has stuff they don't respond to well, for logical reasons or not. Being capable of a negative reaction doesn't make someone special, nor does it entitle them to be completely histrionic about it. A core part of maturity is coming to terms with and growing balanced reactions to stressful situations. Writing off a trigger as an immutable characteristic is insulting to the strength and malleability of the human mind. It seems infantilizing to morph society to every whim that every person has, no matter how minute or inconsequential. While it's easy to blame this poisoning of the discourse on a niche of toxic right-wing elements, I think parts of the left share some culpability for their complacency. The weight that this word should carry has dissipated into a fluffy farce through the insistence of coddling even the most petty of pet peeves. Treating annoying bugaboos with the same concern as legitimate traumatic experiences and disorders is demeaning to people who actually have to deal with those extreme challenges. That's where the humor of the triggered meme is derived from. It's a cartoonish reflection of the real devaluing of language happening today due to its overly liberal application. It's not just silly for the sake of it, it's about something real. I know that the instinct to discourage bullying is generally the correct one, but there is a balance to be found. People who refuse to be challenged are no healthier for society than people who can't stop being belligerent. I might go even so far to consider those types of people to be dweebs. Criticism is all about the denial of complacency, so it's hypocritical to expect art to conform to the insecurities of a niche in society without encouraging people to try and meet their art halfway. Getting stuck in a routine with a preloaded set of acceptable subject matter isn't cause for tolerance. It's obvious that no one should ever be belittled for what they're working through personally, and we should be as understanding of each other's limitations as much as possible. What I take issue with is assuming all of those limitations are permanent. Are we honestly supposed to think that everyone's perfect the way they are? 'Cause I know at least one guy which that statement isn't true for. I myself will probably never use trigger warnings in any context for my entire life. I'd be more willing to do so for my friends and loved ones or people with actual diagnosed disorders, but I already know them and their characters well enough to not bring up certain topics in the first place. Giving them content warnings would just be redundant to the purpose of withholding my thoughts in certain scenarios. As for the general public, they are free to take or leave what I'm talking about. Neither of us would be terribly hurt by not being able to engage with each other about anything and everything. I'm tactful enough to build up to harsh subject matter gradually, so if they get a whiff that what I'm cooking isn't to their taste, they can sit down and dine somewhere else. If I walked up to a butcher shop and started yelling at the clerk about not letting me get my vegan gains on, I'd be fully entitled to get whacked with a rolled up newspaper. I don't want to trick anyone. But the choice between two options will still be there. Get on the train or get off the tracks. Bottom line, my principle is to hold people to the highest standard they can muster, and I expect the same treatment in kind. If I didn't work to overcome my limitations, I would be demonstrably worse off as a person. It's a serious struggle for me to deal with those limitations, but I like myself more now for doing it, and other people seem to like me more for it as well. It would have been no great kindness to have let me shut myself away in my bubble and never talk to anyone, just because that's more comfortable for me in the moment. I still have a long way to go, but at least I'm moving somewhere. Triggers aren't deserving of respect, especially not mine. However, do I blame people for having triggers? Do I think less of people for using trigger warnings? Absolutely not. What room do I have to judge? I got triggered by someone not liking a fucking movie. Hell, they might have even liked it more if I did give them a trigger warning beforehand. I mean, probably not. Their taste is still garbage. Just because triggers might be the most asinine things in the world doesn't make them any less real. They can be fought against and improved upon. Hell, they can potentially go away entirely. They're still a thing. If someone told me that I was a retard for getting annoyed by someone disagreeing with me about Scott Pilgrim, would I have stopped feeling that way? Would I have responded maturely and changed my mind? Hell no. Like, whether they were right or not. My instinct would have been to throw up a wall in front of them and indulge myself further and further. I might have even looked for someone that enabled me and told me my feelings were justified to compensate. My feelings weren't justified, but that's a conclusion I had to come to rationally. There is a difference between tough love, blind love, and being a dick. I wish I could have gotten some more tough love sooner. It would have saved me from burning a whole lot of unnecessary mental calories. I still don't know what to do about this person. They're still around in my life, but it's not like we know each other that well. Hell, it doesn't feel like we're really trying. At least I know I'm not. That's just the status quo for my stupid-ass hermit lifestyle. I don't even know if I owe them an apology, necessarily. I don't know what to say. But it's on me to try and fight against that mindset. If they're not willing or capable of making the same effort, that's fine. I don't expect anything out of anything, except for me. The least I can do is figure out what Scott Pilgrim means to me. I have to comb through it from beginning to end to find that special something that's made it stick with me for this long. Maybe that way things will be easier. Maybe I won't fall for another f***ing man-eater bug. Scott isn't a likable guy. Not in most ways, at least. He sort of barely knows how to play an instrument, and he kicks ass in a fight. He's an okay guy to just kinda be around. Still, he's not the kind of guy that most people would be crazy excited to be friends with. The friends that he does have just more or less hang out with him as an obligation. Even if he screws up and treats them like dirt, they still stick around him. It's just kind of a life situation they've found themselves in, and for better or worse, they seem sorta cool with it. Not ecstatic, just cool, I guess. I can't remember a time where my friend groups didn't feel like this. At best, I always felt like a young Neil, some dude who was always just kinda around with nothing going on with him and nothing to contribute. At worst, I felt like a Scott. I always had this feeling that everyone around me thought there was something wrong with me. I always think there's something I'm too stupid to notice, no matter how obvious people's energy is radiating from them. I often feel like people in my life are there just because we shared something together early on that slowly faded away. It often feels like most of my relationships are just phantom holdovers from a spark of something genuine that I'm not able to truly recreate. We stick around each other in some vague hope that this flame will somehow come back again, but any active optimism for that has probably run dry. I often feel like I'm in a band that totally sucks, and we haven't broken up yet just because we think we can make it big one day. I often feel like Scott, a pathetic dweeby jerk who didn't deserve whatever good he got in life. Even if it's a total fabrication in my mind, even if it's absurd and has little bearing in reality, even if it's completely fictional, that's what I feel a lot of the time. Oh wait, I forgot. Comedy!
Thank you. Get on with it! Yes, get on with it!
Oh, I am enjoying this scene.
Get on with it!
Back to the review.
And yet, while watching this movie, I never stop rooting for Scott. Despite everything that's wrong with him and all the crappy things he says and does, I still want him to be happy. I want to see him kick some ass. I want to see him get the girl. I want him to face the world and win. Scott starts out the story in a pitiable mindset. He's just been dumped by an ambitious, out-of-his-league firebrand. His reaction is to settle for the easiest rebound he can find. He's in the process of repairing his ego, using an innocent, inexperienced high schooler to bring himself up in comparison to her. He doesn't even view Knives as a potential sexual partner, just more of a walking, talking pick-me-up. She's full of energy and spunk, uncluttered by any accumulated hang-ups from life or expectations of him as a partner. It's just simple.
It's just nice, it's just simple.
As nice as it sounds, though, Scott is in a state of total unfulfillment. Knives isn't really going to force him to grow in any meaningful way. Her unconditional adoration of him is shallow. It's not really based off of any intrinsic quality he possesses. She has no other basis of comparison to go off of to judge him. She thinks his band is amazing just because she doesn't listen to music. She thinks he's the most talented guy she's ever been with just because she hasn't been with other guys yet. She becomes enamored with him just because he exists, without any exertion on his part. That sensation is comfy for him, sure, but it's not making him happy. When he meets Ramona, however, the whole framework does a complete 180. Ramona is sassy, blunt, and world-weary. She constantly radiates with an air of being unimpressed. She doesn't laugh at corny jokes. She doesn't suffer any fools. She's exotic to Scott for her mysticism of relative maturity. She's been through a lot, and she wears her mental age on her sleeve just the same way Knives does. However, Scott instantly becomes obsessed with her in the same way Knives fell for him. Ramona possesses something he doesn't, and whether he knows it or not, he wants what she's got. Scott's battle with the evil exes is more of a dramatization for a battle in himself. He's fighting against complacency in his own life to obtain greater capabilities than he currently possesses. He's barely moved an inch from where he grew up, both mentally and physically. Through his fight for Ramona, he takes himself to places he never would have gone otherwise. His struggle is stressful and excruciating, and he freely complains about it incessantly. There's even a point where the pressure really gets to him, and his conviction starts shaking on whether he wants to commit to his new path. It all comes to a head when Ramona is unceremoniously whisked away, and his chance to be with her has seemingly ended. After wallowing for a bit, though, Scott realizes what he truly wants in his life. What he wants will never be served him on a silver platter, and he has to fight to keep it around. He might not be deserving of it, but he's willing to make the effort to get it anyways. He has only a vague idea of what that thing is at first, but he figures it out after a little trial and error. That something isn't to be with a specific person. It isn't love, necessarily. Scott only triumphs when he earns the power of self-respect. He wasn't solely seeking companionship and appreciation from Ramona herself, but respect for himself for being able to stand by her. The only way he can be deserving of her is if he earns that respect for himself exclusively, not from her or anyone else. It's not like Ramona was even capable of giving that to him in the first place. She's her own person with her own struggles and problems. It's too much to ask her to carry Scott's burdens for him in addition to her own baggage. Hell, her stuff is so heavy that she doesn't feel comfortable sharing the load. Even after Scott finally defeats the exes, she defaults to leaving him with Knives. She doesn't want to foist her baggage onto anyone else, and she knows Knives will be far simpler for Scott to deal with than her. Ramona was initially attracted to Scott in the same way he was to Knives.
I just wanted something simple.
He was a reprieve. He was uncomplicated. He was a break from the convoluted, domineering garbage she was used to. After watching the chaos she introduces into his life, she feels like being with her can't possibly be worth the trouble. She hasn't earned the power of self-respect for herself yet. She leaves Scott and Knives fully expecting them to be better off with each other, and for him to be better off without her. Knives isn't having any of that though. She doesn't need Scott. Her arc culminates with her letting go of her obsession over him. While she once thought of him as blindingly brilliant and special, she's earned some perspective that's humbled her expectations and balanced her life. She thinks more of herself now.
I'm too cool for you anyway.
I'm the coolest.
Her self-actualization is already complete. She recognizes what Scott truly wants and what Ramona still needs, and she encourages the two of them to go on together. Their journey isn't complete yet, and they're the ones who can best relate to and complement each other's struggles. I don't blame anyone for not wanting to like Scott. How could I? He's a pathetic, dweeby jerk. On a first impression, it would be the simplest thing to write him off and assume he'll never amount to anything. However, by the end, there's at least one person whose life is better off for knowing him. If Scott resigned himself to being the same dick forever, Ramona would still be a slave to her past. Anyone could be forgiven for thinking that a guy like him could never offer anything meaningful to anyone else. Hell, even towards the end of the story, Scott is shown to still have a lot more work to do in terms of facing his insecurities. However, because he refused to resign himself to the type of person he was capable of making a genuine difference in not just his life, but in someone else's as well. It's common for people to judge each other by their lowest standard. We tend to hold the worst things people have done far and above whatever good they might have achieved. Hell, whatever good they might achieve in the future is almost never of consequence. I would be a hypocrite if I said I didn't prescribe to this standard most of the time too. You can't quantify a person's willingness or ability to change. The past is all we have to work with. However, I think everyone has had a point where someone has held a mistake over them as the defining point of their entire personality. For my entire life, that person has been myself. What's so fascinating about Scott, though, and one of the big reasons why I almost look up to him, is because he's an idiot. He never considers whether or not he deserves what he's getting. He never thinks about whether he's a good person or not. He just does what he does with no regard for anyone's input. That part of him is his greatest weakness, but it's also his greatest strength. If he heeded the advice that Ramona was too much for him and never entered her life, she would have been worse off for it. Whether he deserves her or not is irrelevant to him, just as it's irrelevant to the story. This guy had a chance to do something meaningful for someone, and he took it. By doing so, he became stronger and more capable of helping people like Ramona in the future. Dweeb or no dweeb, he is the hero of his story, and he makes the most of that opportunity. Is Scott's life realistic?
Me and my fireballs, my demon hipster chicks. Tell me, Maddie.
Well, no. However, I think expecting anyone to transform their life is hardly the most realistic thing either. I root for Scott because I want to believe in guys like him. I want to believe that no matter how flawed someone is, there's a germ of latent potential they can bring out. I want to believe that if people apply themselves hard enough, they can do the seemingly impossible. I want to like Scott because I want to like myself. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a comedy. It's full of silly effects and fight scenes and superpowers and nerdy references. However, this story is still, at its core, about something real. The source material is the product of Brian Lee O'Malley transcribing his own life onto the page. He didn't just reincorporate his own tastes and interests as references and the basis for the aesthetics. Most of the characters were based off of people in his own life, with Scott himself acting as an almost self-insert. He just added a dash of surreal comedy to dress up his personal experiences to make something new out of himself. Even though Scott's struggle might seem absurd, and he himself looks unsuited to the role of a hero, his journey is intrinsically meaningful regardless. He isn't asking the world to take him seriously because his world is just as absurd, if not more so than he is. The journey that he undertakes matters for the way he grows as a person relative to nothing besides the kind of person he used to be. In the end, he's still a wacky character in a wacky world. But what he accomplishes still matters. I see myself in Scott, more than countless other characters with lives and personalities more similar to my own. I see myself in this guy. I don't expect anyone to take me seriously. I don't expect anyone to like me. I know I'm overflowing with problems, and I know I have a lot to work on. I understand if nobody wants anything to do with me. I understand if there are things about me that are too much to deal with. However, I'm still taking the journey to face those things. No matter how hard it looks, no matter how much I complain while doing it, I'm trying to grow. That journey itself might look ridiculous to most people, but it's as real as can be for me. The journey might be for something that people don't see as worth pursuing, or that I'm unworthy of obtaining it. People might think that I should have gotten it already, and if I haven't found it by now, then I'll never find it. I'm still going after it anyway. I'm trying to be someone worthy of love. Sure, that would be nice. What I'm really trying to find, though, is self-respect. I'm trying to be the hero of my own story, even if I don't deserve to be one. That story is happening whether I want to be the protagonist or not, so I might as well shape up. And I might as well try to have fun while doing it. In the final shot of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Scott and Ramona hold each other's hands and walk towards a door together. They've been on a pretty insane ride so far, and there's no telling what's behind that door. They might even find tougher challenges than what they've already barely made it through. However, unlike the first door they went through together, Ramona isn't just dragging Scott along. This time around, things are different. They're walking side by side, ready to be there for each other for whatever waits for them. While it was pitch black before, there's a warm horizon light in the distance now. Before, Scott was just flung through that door without any real agency of his own. He was just along for the ride. Now, he's actively stepping through it, both for himself and for the person he's walking alongside with. While he wasn't prepared for the journey before and wasn't confident that he could make it through the first time, he now has the inner strength to push himself forward. Not only that, but he has a capable partner to not just pull his weight for him, but to support him and take the same journey with him. In return, he's going to be capable of returning the favor for all the help he's received along the way. She doesn't just take his hand, they take each other's together. The door opens for them, and they walk through. Damn it, I kind of feel like watching that thing all over again now. I'm gonna go do that. And maybe I'll try chatting with someone about it afterwards.
What's wrong with it? I've lost the bleeps. The what? The what? No, the bleeps. It appears to be jam.
Everyone died. The end.
Dramatic finish!
Thank God I'm smart enough to dispose of that flight of fancy. Talking to people is scary. Yelling at myself in my own head is way more comfy. That's quite the bullet I dodged there. Now. Now, I could go for some goofy Kung Fu Korean cartoons. Some kind of coming-of-age story. I'm a big sucker for those. Throw in some cute girls for good measure. Why not? Alright, what do we got?
I'm sorry about everything. I'm sorry about me.